Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast where a behavioral scientist examines what it's like to live a humorous life. Glimpse into the lives of the funniest people in entertainment, business, and science as your host, Dr. Peter McGraw, explores their habits, motivations, and secrets to success. Get ready to fire up your brain and your funny bone. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast that looks at the lives of funny people. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is Kym Terribile. Kym is a writer, Reiki practitioner, and certified yoga teacher. She's a graduate of the University of Hawaii with a degree in English literature. She lives in Boulder, Colorado with her 2 dogs. Welcome, Kym.
Thanks, Peter.
So, as far as I know, you are the most loyal listener of the podcast. And so I'm not going to ask you my typical opening question.
Oh, no. Okay, good.
Because I figure you're prepared for that question.
Yeah, I did. I did research.
So instead, I want to know, why are you not writing more often?
Oh, gosh. Okay, I feel like I'm being grilled right now. I have a laundry list of excuses that I can offer you.
Oh, yeah. What are the top 3?
The top 3 is it's summer and it's so nice outside and I need to be outside because we do have winters here. So I have to take advantage of when it's sunny and nice. Reason number 2 is probably because I'm afraid to sit down and actually, commit myself to it because what if I fail?
Okay.
And reason number 3.
It's really number 2.
It's number 2, yeah. It's number 2. We got there.
So I want you to talk more about that, because I have to tell you, I don't have that gene. Mm-hmm. So people talk about, fear of failure as a reason that people don't do things. And I just don't have that. Now, look, I fail. So it's not that I'm unable to fail and thus not scared of this imaginary thing. But I have plenty of reasons why I might procrastinate or I don't get things done in the way that I do. But it's never because I'm afraid that they're not going to turn out well, and so I avoid doing them. And so, Kym.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
I think at this point, I've realized so much of my identity is attached to the success of being a writer, of writing novels. If I take that out of the equation of my life, I'm really afraid that there's no other driving force of this is what I want to do. This is who I am, because for me, story and literature is so deeply ingrained in my essence. And it's the only thing I ever thought that I would be. That if I sit down and actually write and fail at it, then I'm afraid I won't know who I am.
So a little bit of background about Kym. So Kym's bio says she's a writer, Reiki practitioner, and certified yoga teacher. Mm-hmm. But what do you spend most of your time doing?
Walking my dogs. I'm trying to get in at least 20,000 steps a day before I walk into work.
Right.
So that's my goal.
And work is?
I wait tables at a restaurant in town.
That is not on, so that's not on the bio.
No, just because I feel like it doesn't define me in any way. It's what I do for money. It has nothing to do with my identity.
Okay. So when we met, you weren't writing very much.
No, I wasn't. No.
But you have always considered yourself a writer since you were a teen?
Yeah, probably 12 years old. I remember I started carrying around this notebook when I was 12, and I would write down poems, and they would just come out of nowhere. I felt like I was channeling, poetry onto the page. And of course, I thought it was the greatest thing that had ever been written at the time. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I started taking writing classes in high school and junior high. We had those writing workshops that you could just take where all you did was sit at a computer and just write short stories or poetry for 45 minutes, 3 days a week, and actively submit them. So I was submitting a lot in high school.
Mm-hmm. So what changed?
I don't know. Nobody standing over me, making me write every day. I got to college and I did, my concentration was in creative writing, which was really good for me. I was producing a lot. And then, I don't know. I don't know what happens.
This, I don't know if this is a real story or anything like that, but I've heard this kind of anecdote of, if you go into a class of third graders and you say, how many of you are artists? Every kid raises their hand.
Yeah.
And then if you go into a high school, seniors in high school, and you say, how many of you are artists? Like 3 kids raise their hand.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of feel like that's something, there's something along the line that's either systemic, well, certainly systemic, like certainly the world beats that out of us.
Mm.
But then there's something individual that's going on there too, in part because you were just so, right? You went from being like, this is gold.
Yeah.
Right? You're writing poems and you're like, this is gold, to you're walking your dogs all the time because you're afraid that your novel's not going to be good enough.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Well, why?
I think like,
By the way, for the listener, Kym and I are friends.
Yeah.
So we know each other well. And so I'm not like giving a stranger a hard time.
yeah, no. But the reason I have started writing in my life is because of Peter. So thank you for that. So I think you're allowed to criticize.
I wasn't fishing for a compliment.
Yeah. So, what was the question again?
I feel like there's a black box.
Yeah.
Right. So on one side, there's Kym, the 12-year-old, 15-year-old who's writing poems and writing short stories and submitting them.
Mm-hmm.
There's even Kym who goes off to college and studies creative writing and English literature more generally. And then there's the Kym who I know today, who's older, but not old. Like it's not too late.
Yeah.
Who has the ability. Like if I could write like you, I mean, I just don't know what I could, you know what I mean? Like, I'm wondering, like, where's the limit if I could write like you?
No. And
so what, like you basically were like, okay, I think I can get a draft of this novel by April or what was it?
My goal was the April 30th of 2019.
Yes, April 30th. So you had like, and I was like, good for you. Good luck. And I'm thinking to myself, not gonna happen.
Oh, really?
I mean, like but this is my perspective on writing. As a writer, I'm slow and we've talked about this. I edit too much.
Yeah.
I don't put enough ideas down. And you're just like, oh yeah, got it done.
Oh, yeah.
I have a full draft of a novel.
I do. Yeah. I subscribe to like the Stephen King, get it done. You have 3 months to write your draft and that's it.
That's an incredible feat. And you hit your deadline. So
I did.
This is not a matter of inability. Like you haven't lost.
Oh, I'm totally capable of doing this. If I decided to sit down, I guess, I could pursue this as a career path. I think what's stopping me is, fear of failure. And then, shame. I sent you a short story the other day. I was just telling you, and I know you said you didn't get it, but the whole time, like the last 3 days, I've been like, oh my God, it was that bad that he can't even respond. I'm so ashamed.
Oh my God.
So I think it's just, rejection, fear of rejection. Like this is the thing that is nearest and dearest to my heart is this, creative aspect of myself, and to let people read that and see that is incredibly vulnerable. I write for myself every day, I journal every day.
Yeah.
And then I do, even when I'm out walking my dogs, I have either my phone where I put into notes or index cards, something where I can take down, because that's where I get most of my ideas, is when I'm out and not sitting in front of a computer. But then I just don't go and write them down. I don't elaborate on them.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating. It's really, so there's this idea in psychology called about empathy gaps. And so essentially it's very difficult to put yourself in someone else's situation. Like we think we can do it, but we're really terrible about it. So most of the work is, like if you're in a kind of hot state and someone else is in a cold state, it's hard to, there's like this big disconnect because it's hard for you to override your emotions to be able to understand that person's in a different emotional state. But I think this is true. I'm certain it's true of a variety of things. So in the world of comedy, it's very difficult to understand when you're offended by a joke why someone else could be laughing at it, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And so this happens to be one of those things where, like, yeah, in the abstract, I get it. People talk about this idea, but I just don't personally see it enough. I mean, look, I probably fear failure in some ways, but you know what I mean? But in terms of like producing things.
Do you think it's possibly because I
write white male.
No. Gotta throw that in. Well, I'm writing, I'm writing fiction. I'm creating story and things. Even with my personal life, it's creative nonfiction, so it is incredibly personal and it's me. You're writing more academic type things, so there might not be that same emotional attachment to it that I have to my creativity.
Yeah, that may be true. It's the work I'm doing is less part of my identity.
Yeah, exactly.
Even the humor code, it was co-written and my co-author did the heavy lifting with the writing. And I did work hard to not censor ideas. And so, that's a reasonable.
Yeah.
I look, I can't tell you it's right or wrong, the reason behind it. But I can only observe as someone who cares about you that I just think that it might be a missed opportunity.
No, yeah.
Like it's not, obviously, it's not too late.
No,
right?
it's not. No.
But I just feel, was it you who said this to me? Like, don't die with the music in you?
Oh, no, I didn't.
There's this quote I found somewhere. I'll find it and put it in the exhibits. But this guy has it's a quote. Somebody was talking about this, like, it's a quote for artists, which is, don't die with the music in you. And I think that so we're gonna move on from this little therapy session
okay,
for a second.
Thank you.
That's what happens when I ask a hard-hitting question versus a light and easy. By the way, what would you have said to what would you?
So I do have a candle company in my closet ready to go that you talked me out of doing and instead told me to write a novel. So I can always fall back on, pouring.
Maker.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, I think I would do a bunch of part-time things.
Okay.
Like I think it'd be fun to be like a nursery school teacher for a day and go in and paint macaroni necklaces.
So a substitute teacher.
Yeah, exactly. Like a magician's assistant for a day would be awesome if I could be like the top half and not the legs of the girl who gets sawed.
I see.
And I always wanted to name paint colors.
Someone has to do it.
They're great names.
What's your favorite?
Well, I just redid my apartment, and if you're looking for an awesome navy, get Starless Night Bear Marquee. It is amazing.
Okay.
It's navy.
I'm going to try to put this in the exhibit if I can find it.
Pinterest it. It's really good.
What's Starless Night?
I think it's called Starless Night. Yeah.
Okay. Paint. This is a paint color?
It's a paint color. You can get it at Home Depot.
Okay.
It's Bear Marquee makes it. One coat and you're done.
All right.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Maybe they'll sponsor you.
I need more listeners before anybody's going to sponsor me. You're not cutting
I
it.
probably won't listen to this one either, so there goes your weekly listener.
So, about the writing, you and I both are a fan of a book by Steve Pressfield called The War of Art.
Oh, yeah, you got that for me.
And I usually bring that book with me when I'm on the road.
Oh.
It's a nice, easy, it's a light read.
Yeah.
And it's short sections. And it's a good travel book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a good vacation book, right? A big fat novel, I think is what people like when they're on vacation, but it's a good travel book. You're tired, you're in an airport, and so on. I'm still a reader more than a listener, but that book, it comes in two parts.
Okay.
Right. So the first half of the book, maybe it's three, but I think certainly there's two. The first half of the book is what he calls resistance, which is what you.
Yeah, I'm totally stuck there. Yeah.
We were just talking about, right? So the idea is that your psyche, the world. I mean, it's very. I would think you would like the Pressfield book more than me because it is very. It's not hippy dippy, but it has like this. It has this kind of. I'm losing the thought, but the way he talks about the world, like, you know, and he's not a scientist like I am.
Yeah.
Who talks about procrastination and willpower and has all these fancy terms.
Yeah, he does weave his experiences into it a little bit. Yeah.
And he essentially says is that if you try to create any major change in your life, if you try to do anything hairy and audacious, resistance will rise up.
Yeah.
Inside of you and around you to try to thwart this, right? So no one ever experiences resistance to play video games.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And no one ever has resistance when it comes to eating chocolate cake. But if you want to lose 10 pounds, or if you want to write the next great American novel, or if you want to launch a new podcast or something like that, resistance is going to show up. It's going to show up in the form of, there's these other things I really need to do. I got to get my steps in.
Yep.
Your relationship will get in the way, you know, whatever, you know. And so he talks about all these different forms of resistance that's there. So first of all, I want to get your reaction to that idea.
To the idea of resistance?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. There's everything. So my computer, my writing spot is like literally, I mean, you saw my apartment. It's tiny. It's right there.
Yeah.
So all I have to do is sit in the chair, you know, and everything gets in the way of me getting there.
Yeah, got to tidy this up.
Oh my gosh,
clean this thing.
My apartment is never cleaner than when it's time to sit down and write, you know, because all the dishes get done, everything, you know, like I take care of anything rather than that.
And so what's fascinating is how, so he has a solution to resistance.
Yeah. Should I tell you now? I didn't finish the whole book.
I'm going to quiz you.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I remember.
What his actually just, you have to sit in the chair.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He's like, no matter what, you have to sit in the chair. Whatever that thing is, you have to do that thing.
Yeah.
Even if you sit there, you can't do anything else.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting about that is, you know, look, I can add a bunch of kind of behavioral science stuff to this, right? So any of these endeavors are challenging. And so what happens is we try to regulate our emotions, right? Because it gives rise to negative emotions. And so then we avoid those negative emotions. We do other things that are pleasurable instead, or we might even procrastinate in a utilitarian way. You know, tidy up the house or do your dishes or fold laundry or whatever. And then the kind of behavioral science take on the sit in the chair is you need to create a habit where no matter what, that's what you do, and then eventually it just becomes something that you have to do.
Yeah.
It's never going to be easy, but you have to create a habit, and the habit is the buffer, imperfect as it may be, to resistance.
Yeah. So I've been hearing this for years.
Okay.
And for some reason now, it feels like the first time I'm hearing it, I'm like, that is such a good idea. Even though I've heard it probably 1,000 times.
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh, I just need to sit in the chair for 25 minutes.
Writer's right.
Yeah. Or just sit there and stare at a blank screen. And eventually I'll, you know.
So I had Shane Moss on.
You did.
You listened to that
I
one.
did, yeah.
And so Shane and I talked about writing. And Shane goes as far as using this program called Write or Die.
Yeah, I will not do that.
I think I titled the episode
You did, yeah.
Writing It or Dying with Shane Moss. And so, do you recall what Write or Die does?
Yeah, it deletes your words. I would never. No way. No.
So it's very goal focused. So you basically log on and you set a timer and you set a number of words. And so what happens is if you have a good pace, right? So if you're going to hit your things, it gives you kind of positive feedback, like dings and ooh yeah kind of things. And if you start falling short, it starts to warn you. The screen starts to flash. It starts to make these buzzing sounds and so on. But there's some sort of like annihilation setting you can put on. It's not called that, but that's the spirit of it.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, I'm sure.
And what happens is if you don't keep the pace that you set, it starts deleting your previously written words.
No, I cannot. I would never do that. I even keep like a blank document for anything I cut out of what I write.
Fair.
I just paste it over there. So there's no way I would ever use that program. I can't do it.
But it is a way to incentivize or incentivize writing and disincentivize just sitting.
So once I sit and I start typing, I'm fine.
I know, so.
You know, it's crazy. It works, but.
So my favorite part of the book is not about resistance, because actually I don't have that as much. Look, it's a problem, of course. We all have it. Willpower is a problem. But the next section is, he talks about turning pro.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so his thing is that you treat this endeavor like a professional treats it, not as an amateur treats it. So he uses sports analogies. So the amateur plays for fun, the professional plays for keeps, right? The amateur does it for the love of the game, and the professional does it for the money.
Yeah. So am I just on the bench because I'm not doing anything at all?
No, you're doing it. Look,
Okay.
I mean, you wrote a draft of a novel in the first half of this year.
I did. So I still, according to my timeline, I could still bang this out and finish it by the end of 2019.
Why not?
That's what I'm thinking might happen.
It's Peter Thiel. Leave it to these like Aspergery tech moguls to become the modern day philosophers and advice givers. And look, for some reason I understand why. Like, they've accomplished something that's very difficult, becoming $100 million heir or whatever. The other one is like they're incredibly smart folks, and then now they have a platform, right? So they write books, and there's Twitter, and they write blogs and all this kind of stuff. And they're voracious readers, and they hang out with a lot of other very smart people. And the thing that they do that like other smart people don't do is they talk directly to people, right? They're not writing in the New Yorker. They're not writing academic articles. They're just, they're available to the masses, so to speak. In any case, he asked this question. He has a series of questions. He has standards that he uses to evaluate businesses and so on. And one of one of those things he says is, suppose you think something's going to take 10 years to do or 3 years to do. Can you do it in 6 months? Right? Like, ask yourself, can I do it in 6 months? And if so, how would I do it? And I think, you look at the normal timeline for writing a book and so on. I think with your skills, why couldn't you have a draft ready for an editor to give you feedback on by December?
Yeah. I think as soon as the first snow hits and I'm inside, like words are going to start flowing again.
Yeah, that's right. That's just a painful delay.
Yeah,
that's right.
exactly.
But I like the idea of turning pro in the sense of, I like the idea of professionalizing things because I wouldn't use that analogy, though I like it. I think of it as, how do you become a craft person? Like, I think that's the model by which to think about moving from being an apprentice to being a craft person. And of course, that is professionalism, right? I mean, that's what craft people have, is a level of professionalism. But I think the craft person mentality fits better.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. I like looking at it. This is how I'm interpreting it, and I could be completely wrong, but in terms of like, I feel like I've spent a lot of my time like studying literature, reading literature, taking classes, reading every self-help book on writing that there is, and there has to come a point where I'm just like, okay, I need to stop taking in and start, putting out.
Yeah, as I say, stop consuming and start creating.
Yeah, but if everyone was, I always had a question with that, because if everyone's creating, then who's consuming?
Well, okay, I think the issue is, it's not stop consuming. It's getting the ratio right.
Yeah.
And so for most people, the ratio of consuming to creating is 10 to 1, 100 to 1, kind of a thing. Right, so most people scroll through Instagram and aren't making great posts.
Yes.
Most people are reading books but not writing books. Most people are listening to podcasts, not making podcasts, and so on. What I'd like to see is that ratio reverse or get equal. So for every hour you spend consuming, you spend an hour creating.
Yeah, and you're pretty good with that, right?
Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
But you need both. Like, so I think of consuming is like nutrition, and creating is like working out.
Yeah.
You need both of them because the consuming helps you with the creation. Like, you know, like if you read great literature, if you want to be a great writer, you have to read great literature.
Yeah, or really bad literature.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I talk to a lot of comics, and they say that it's valuable to watch good comedy and bad comedy.
Yeah, because I think, like, when you see something and you can look at it and be like, okay, this is how I would fix this, or, you know, it's kind of like critiquing it as it's happening, or...
Yeah, so I think, you know, where I've seen this the most is talking to directors, film directors. So film directors watch a lot of bad movies. And the idea is you learn more from bad movies than you learn from good movies. Because you see what doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I hope you get through the war of art eventually.
I know, I hope so too. You know what, to be honest, there were so many big words in that book.
Oh my goodness.
There were. I was like circling words. I was like, oh my gosh. But no, my favorite writing book, just to put it out there, is Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert. I love her. I love her. She's kind of my guru.
I've read that book.
It's so good. It's a lot of story.
Yeah. It's so for the listener, who is she?
Elizabeth Gilbert, Eat, Pray, Love.
Yeah.
Yes, she wrote Eat, Pray, Love. She's a brilliant writer. Her new book just came out. I'm excited to read it. Fiction.
I will put this in the exhibit.
Okay. Everyone go get City of Girls.
Why is that so great?
I don't know. I haven't read it yet, but I just love her. I think she's just an incredible person. Even just looking at, like, her Instagram and her, like, posts and how she presents herself to the world, she's incredibly inspiring to other people.
That's great.
I adore her.
I think that is interesting where you get, like, Stephen King has written a book on writing.
Yeah.
Where these folks get to a point where they feel like they want to give back.
Well, and it's a publisher, probably, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, we need another book. And you're like,
Yeah, but they're all so different, and that's what I think I've learned is everyone has a completely different technique for how they go about getting their draft down on paper.
That's right, except there's one thing in common.
Yes. Well, what is it? I think it's...
They write every day.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one thing.
Yeah.
Regardless of who you are, they write every day.
They do, yeah.
I like Roy Peter Clark of the Poynter Institute. He has a book. I can't remember the name of it. Unfortunately, it's in my office right now. But it's a series of short lessons. Some of them are stylistic. You know, like verbs are the engine of the sentence, and you put your most, you know, like you should start with your two most important words, your noun and your verb, like so very like basic, you know, wordsmithing type stuff.
Yeah.
But he also used to work as a reporter, and so he's very sort of story oriented. So one of the lessons is like get the name of the dog. Right. So he tells a story about a report he was doing, and he asked the name of the dog, and then he worked the name of the dog into the story, and how instead of it just adds a richness.
Yeah.
Right. When you know the dog's name is Spot versus Harvey. And when the dog's name is Harvey, it tells you something.
Yeah, about the people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that kind of way.
I love that. I feel like for me, though, these books, it's more like, you know, it's almost like therapy psychology. You know, I don't need technique. I need more, like, let me coddle you through this experience type thing.
Yeah, I need both.
Yeah.
I need more of the technique in some ways. So you are my number one listener as far as I know.
Oh,
no offense to any other number one listeners
Yeah.
out there, but as far as I know, because you regularly tell me what episodes you like.
Oh,
and
yeah, I
which
do.
ones you don't.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to use you
for your knowledge and your opinions now.
Okay.
And that is, tell me about some episodes you liked.
Okay.
Tell me about what you like about them. Tell me about episodes you don't like and what you don't like about them.
Okay.
With the goal of helping me. I've got at least 40 more of these in me.
Okay.
No, that's not true. I have, 35. I always said that I would do 100.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I have 35-ish left.
Okay.
So 2/3 of the way through.
Okay.
For sure. How do I make, what should I keep doing that works? What should I stop doing that doesn't work?
Mm-hmm.
Don't hold back.
Okay, so episodes, just off the top of my head, I think I like the episodes where you have females on a lot more. I feel like there's just a better chemistry.
I think there's a little something to that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're a little flirty, a little bit. Maybe that's what it is.
I don't know if that's the case.
Okay.
But maybe it's just
yeah, I don't know. I love.
So more women.
Yes, more women. Who was that? What my favorite episode, and I can't remember her name. Maybe Jen or something.
Jen O'Donnell.
Yes,
that's one of my favorites.
She was wonderful. She was wonderful. She was just very open and outgoing, and knew her craft really well.
And opinionated.
Yes, but not in this overbearing kind of in your face kind of way. It was very she just owned it. You know.
That was a fun episode.
Yeah, I love that one. That was one of my favorites.
Okay,
What else do I love? I love in the episodes where you kind of, because I know you and I feel like I know so much more about you from, I guess, essentially being a stalker now. Is that you're making it too much to everyone out there. But just listening to the podcast, when you tell stories that are relatable to people.
Okay.
You know, and I think you do a really great job of providing kind of context for what you're talking about. You know, you're always addressing the listener and being for the listeners out there.
Yeah, I try to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I am sensitive to when I talk too much. Like this episode, I feel like I'm talking
too much. Oh, okay.
Totally.
Okay.
So I think there's a sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say the ratio of the guest talking to me talking, I never want it to be 90-10, because that's an interview, not a podcast. And I never want it to be 60-40 or below.
But I just feel like it's conversation. It's whatever kind of happens, and you just kind of let it flow.
That's fair.
You know?
It's just a heuristic, a shortcut I use when I just go, I'm sitting back too much. That's happened in a few episodes. And then an episode like this, I feel like I'm like Mr. Motormouth.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm doing
No, it's great.
Okay.
It's great. Your listeners love it. What else in terms of what works still?
Yeah, let's stay
Let's stay with the positives.
for now.
I like it when you have comedians on.
Yeah.
I like people who are actually doing stand-up still. They're just super funny and witty and
they're smart.
Yeah,
introspective.
Yeah, I enjoy that.
So I've been doing a lot of these from Boulder lately, and there's just less access. So with the move to Los Angeles, where I think future episodes are going to have a lot more professionals. I've had a lot of people who I just think are funny people. Yeah, people I like, which is my only standard.
You've had a lot of colleagues on too.
I've had some colleagues.
You have.
You don't like those?
I don't know. those aren't my favorites, because I feel like sometimes you get to talking about academic, very niche things that I don't understand or don't have the context for, or just don't really interest me. I feel like there's some episodes where you talked about marketing and all that kind of stuff, and I don't necessarily see how that links to being a funny creative person.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Although I would say, if you haven't listened to the one with Stephanie Johnson, she's a management colleague, and I think it's called Talking Inclusivity, or something like that with Stephanie Johnson.
Okay.
She's great.
Okay. I'll go back and read.
I did a lot of talking in that episode.
Okay.
I was terribly. I'm am I mansplaining right now?
Oh, I think I remember that.
Because I was saying, because I'm so excited about her work. I was I started talking about her own work, and I should have just let her talk about it. That's my own mistake. That's my one regret with that episode. That was a missed opportunity. what else is working, what's not working?
I think that's it. I really enjoy your podcast, and I'm not sure if it's just because I know you on a personal level and I'm like excited that you're doing something that I find really cool and amazing. Although now having, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and everybody has a podcast. Every celebrity out there has a podcast right now.
It's not a high barrier to entry.
It's like, so.
It's not a high barrier. I mean, look, it's just high enough that everybody doesn't have one, but there's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. I've been blowing off your podcast a little bit for Armchair Expert.
Yeah,
Jack Shepard, I'm obsessed.
You have a new love.
Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with him.
I'm not really making any big plans to make changes to it. I think I could stand to try to aim higher with like the stature of the guest.
Yeah, no offense to anyone who's been on here or.
No, but I mean, I'd be like, yeah. A lot of times my favorite episodes are with the most successful people. There's a reason they're that successful. It's not just luck.
Yeah, and they have practice,
That's right. They do good podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're talkers.
Yeah, they've been interviewed before.
And they have charisma and so on. So I'm not announcing my secret project yet, but what's interesting for the listener is if you do tune in to this other project when I launch it, probably fall, I've enlisted Kym to be a co-host at times.
Yeah, so.
And I'm curious, so we've already taped some episodes with you as the co-host.
We have, yeah.
And I'm going to have guest co-hosts, so you did a few, and possible you do more in the future. How do you feel about how that went?
The co-hosting?
And what would you do differently now, in hindsight, having had some experience and had a chance to reflect on it?
I think more just speaking what came into my mind. I was not... I didn't push the boundaries and I didn't say what I wanted to say because I didn't know where that line was. I didn't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable because we were dealing with people that are respected individuals, so I didn't want to talk about things that might make them uncomfortable or, So I think in the future it would just be, okay, you have to sometimes cross the boundary.
You have to own it.
Yeah, you have to own it. Oh, my God. It comes back. Yeah.
We were chatting before this, and evidently at some point, Kym was telling me that she pulls tarot cards in the morning, and she was sort of like hemming and hawing and kind of making...
Well, I mean, it wasn't just tarot cards. I had said, I sat down and meditated with my mala, and then I staged my apartment, and then I was pulling tarot cards, and I was super embarrassed about it.
I can tell you were.
Yeah, I was. I was like blushing, head down, covering my face, like, why am I telling this person this? Because it's not something I normally share with anyone. It's my personal pathway into...
Now the world knows.
Yeah, if you guys want to find divinity, tarot cards and shades. Yeah, I do. So I think that's, what I'm working on. I feel like recently I've gone through this transition where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually an adult woman and not a girl anymore. And I think I didn't realize that. There was no rite of passage, I didn't get married, I didn't have a baby, and there was no bat mitzvah, so.
Yes, I could see that. And you use a lot of wrinkle cream.
I do.
Young.
I know, yeah.
So that owning it idea, I can't take credit for it. I mean, I can take credit for saying it like that to you at that moment, but that's not my idea.
No. But I think it was just the right time. You said it at a moment where I was ready to hear it.
Yeah, I picked it up from comics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think, look, it's easy to criticize comics. On one hand, it's easy to hold them up in high esteem because they have this seemingly magical ability. On the other hand, it's sort of easy to disparage them because in some ways it doesn't feel like they ever kind of grow up and, they're kind of misfits, so to speak. But one of the things that I find so appealing about comedians is their authenticity. And the issue, there's this saying, I think it's Del Close, it comes out of the world of improv, that truth is comedy. Now, I don't actually believe that as someone who studies humor, but I believe that it's a useful way to create comedy is to find the things that are truthful in life. I think that you can make great comedy by fabrication, so I don't think it's the only path. But But Shane Moss, who we've mentioned earlier, he talks about when he finds himself reluctant to talk about something on stage, he forces himself to talk about it. Like, that's his rule. So if he's embarrassed by something bad happens, like, he ended up in a psych ward, and he immediately put it into his act.
Yeah.
And I think that's, when you think about it, that's what we're looking for in stories in life, which is you don't want the watered down, filtered version of it. You want the grit, the grime. You want the challenges. I mean, the whole hero's journey in literature is about the hard things that are there. And so, look, the fact that you meditate, sage your apartment, pull tarot cards is what makes you interesting and different.
Mm-hmm. Well, not in Boulder, but yeah.
I mean, even by Boulder standards nowadays, it's well, you're doing all three. It's a trifecta.
Yeah, it is.
In any case, so I'm, as you were saying earlier about telling stories, I've talked about things on this podcast that I would talk with friends about, but I wouldn't talk about it in my class. And, like I've talked about seeing a therapist, I've talked about anxiety, I've talked about my childhood. I mean, I'm not a terribly broken person who has lots and lots of problems, and so these are not major, they're not scintillating details. I'm not getting arrested, or I don't have drug addictions or anything like that, thankfully. But it's my attempt to make this better by being, and I figure, like, geez, if I can't talk about these things, how am I supposed to help other people?
No, I think you do a really good job of opening up and, in times being vulnerable.
I try. I'm working on it. I mean, I think that we have this sort of skewed version of bravery in the world, right? So when you say, well, what's bravery? You think of, like, a firefighter going into a burning home, or, someone going, paratrooping into behind enemy lines.
Yeah, it's all like adrenaline rush.
It's all very, and it's all this very, like, stereotypically masculine, swaggery, robust kind of put yourself in danger, bravery. I think that women are way better at this than men. I think being vulnerable is, and I might have even got this saying from you, is another path to bravery.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got it from Brene Brown, who I love. I love her.
And I think a lot of men miss, how do I say this right? I think that traditional views of masculinity don't celebrate the bravery of being vulnerable as a man.
Yeah.
Jen and I talked about the patriarchy a lot in that podcast. And one of the things that I like to say is that the patriarchy oppresses men also. And women can perpetuate it, right? So when a woman says to her man up, that's a manifestation of the patriarchy, right? And so if a man can't be vulnerable and tell his partner or his friends he's scared, if he's afraid, to ask for help, that he's actually, I believe, less of a man as a result of it, because he's not able to experience the full range of masculinity. And so, these are small steps in a public sphere for me to not be, like, to only view bravery in one way.
No, exactly. I mean, I think, vulnerability is the most courageous thing that you can do.
I think that a lot of men would rather run into a burning building.
Yeah, than sit down and talk about feelings.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
to say, I'm really scared about this. I worry about these things.
Yeah. And I think at the same time, I've had partners in the past where if they did that, I'd be like, whoa, like, I don't want to see you cry. I don't want to see those tears, because it's uncomfortable. You don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. I had a recent experience where I said to a woman who I was out with, I was like, I'm not sure you're attracted to me. Like, I can't make sense of this. Where on one hand, and it was so scary to say that. It would just either be easier to avoid it, you know what I mean? And as a result of it, but it was, it was like one of those things, like, I don't know, and I'm concerned, and I'm scared to ask, but I'm...
Did you feel better after you asked?
I thought it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was the right thing to do. But I don't think a long time ago I never would have done that. Not even that long ago. So I think it's a powerful idea, and I think it relates to our opening conversation about fearing failure and your ability to recognize that.
Yeah, isn't that what the whole problem is? I'm afraid of being vulnerable, in a way.
I know, but you're able to be vulnerable in all these other places in your life.
I know, because I feel like the stakes aren't as high.
Yeah, so the issue is your identity as a writer going all the way back to age 12.
Yeah.
Is threatened.
And just like, for me, this is, eventually I'll be a writer. That's what I'm going to be. That'll be my career. And if I fail at it, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, what is there?
What is there?
You do start doing Reiki.
Yeah. I love Reiki. It's some good stuff, good energetic healing.
So you had mentioned that you're not married, no kids.
Yes.
You have these 2 dogs.
Yes, I do.
So you haven't had this rite of passage, which is part of the American dream. You don't own a home.
No.
And so you have been, and you're not pursuing those things.
No.
But you're not looking to get married, you're not looking to have children, you're not looking to buy a home.
No.
You have been doing something that I find really fascinating.
Yeah.
You know what it is?
Is it dating myself?
Yeah, you started dating yourself.
I'm dating myself.
So I want you to talk about that.
Okay, so I decided maybe like a month ago that I needed a break from seeing men in my life, because I feel like I've just gone from, to a monogamous, one guy to another. There's never been any space for just me, or I wasn't even, thinking about a guy. And it's a lot of energy you put towards, dating.
That's the guys you're
yeah. There's a lot. There's six methods.
Like, why buy a house?
Yeah, they need work. So that's, something to look at as well. But I just decided I'm going to take some space for myself. And I'm at a point where, a lot of my friends are married. They're in serious relationships. And I don't want to miss out on doing things because I'm not dating someone and I don't have a friend to go with. So I just started.
Yeah, the world is set up for groups and especially couples.
It is, yeah. So I just started taking myself out. So I took myself out to dinner. I went to go see a talk a couple weeks ago. I took taco by myself, which was super awkward because you needed to make friends, you get to picnic lunch. And then I went to see a writer the other night. I got out to dinner, which is kind of interesting to go out by yourself because I'm like, I don't want to be on my phone, but I don't want to bring a book because I'm trying to, just be with myself. So I'll use an index card and the pen.
Okay.
And just sit there and...
I do that.
Yeah.
I travel solo a lot.
Yeah.
So I'll sometimes ask a bartender or a server, can I have a piece of paper and a pen and an idea.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's been really, really wonderful, actually. Or, one night I was supposed to go out and see a comedy show and I decided to stay in instead and just,
take care of yourself.
Yeah, self-care, set up. I'm very, one of my favorite things to do is set up my space. Lighting, candles, incense. I'm very indulgent. Like, if I want to eat a pint of ice cream, my favorite place to do it is in the bathtub.
Okay. You're like a scene from a movie.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Bubbles, Epsom salt, music, candles, essential oils, like everything. I will really take time to set a sacred space.
Yeah.
And, yeah, just hang out and listen to music in my bathtub.
That is so not me.
I'm a tourist guy. I'm super indulgent, sensuous, so.
Yeah, I'm sure you tell it. I actually did an Epsom salt bath recently. I never do that kind of thing. I forget why. I think I was super sore.
Yeah, it's so good for you.
But, I mean, there was harsh lighting.
Oh, no.
There's nothing sensuous about it. It's just like, I'm going to sit in here for 20 minutes and then...
Yeah, but I feel like that's what kind of my whole life has become, this very, sensual, heightened. I actually am working on this article right now. Well, I'm trying to write an article. It's called Tantric Self-Love. And it's about, like, really taking the time to do things for yourself in this very, like, slow and pleasant way. So I'll can journal if you want it. Give me a call.
I know Waylon.
Oh, you do? Oh, perfect. Yeah, if you could just send that over.
He would be a good person to have on here.
Oh, yeah, you should.
But I'm moving away, so...
Next time.
What do you want to talk about?
What do I want to talk about? I'm not really sure. This did not go how I thought it was going to go.
How did you think it was going to go?
I don't know. I thought it was going to be more like, funny life facts. And not joking around, like adorable little banter that we have. I didn't feel like it was like, you hit my subjects that, got me.
I know. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little vulnerable right now.
Yeah, I mean, for the listener, Kym's on here because she's very funny.
Yeah, and
she's not as fun. She's funnier than she thinks she is, also.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah. So of course, because I get to decide who's on or not, you easily clear the bar. But I don't think most meetings have to be funny to be successful.
No, and I think you hear on some of the subject matter.
So you want to stop talking.
Unless you have any other questions.
I have one more question.
Okay.
But I just didn't know if there's something you wanted to talk about.
I don't think so. So let me just say this, because I did say this to someone today, and this has nothing to really do with anything that we're talking about. But I've made a lot of major shifts in my life over the last year and a half. I started really exercising and taking care of myself and making, my self-love, my mission. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I did, I was thinking about, what is the number one piece that's most important to this puzzle? And I think it's really being conscious of what I'm grateful for. So every night before I go to sleep, I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for every day, and it shifted my perspective on life. I actually got that from Oprah.
Yeah, she got it from my field.
Oh, really?
I came out of behavioral science.
Oh, yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's a big win.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Positive psychology research.
Yeah, it's life-changing.
Yeah, it's funny. I know that this stuff works and I don't do it.
Yeah, well, you seem pretty put together, like you're doing it, you haven't had it.
Yeah, that's true, but I can stand it. Because, so this is, so a gratitude journal. Mm-hmm. I think it's neat you're doing that. So if I know put on my professor hat.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
I'm like, stop talking. So the actual thing that we're supposed to do, the technical thing you're supposed to do, you're supposed to write 3 things that went well and why. Mm. That's like the critical condition. So, these are things you're grateful for. When things go well, you're grateful, obviously. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing is the why seems to matter. Yeah. In terms of recognizing that you have good luck sometimes. Recognizing that you have good skills sometimes, recognizing that you have good friends sometimes. And so the why is about the process, and not just that. Yeah. But even just talking about what went well is important because it's our natural ability, it's our natural tendency as humans to be focused on the negative. Mm-hmm. And so we're more vigilant about potential bad things happening than potential good things happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
When things are uncertain, we tend to think about the negatives associated with that uncertainty. So, for example, you allegedly sent me that short story, which I never received or overlooked. And you had uncertainty and you went dark.
Oh, I did, yeah.
It's not because you're a dark person, it's just because you're a person.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the nice things about a gratitude journal is it forces you to focus on good things.
It does, yeah.
It just shifts the balance a little bit more towards the good.
Yeah, even with, I've been doing this practice now, I have a word that I try and bring in to my week. So it could be courage or trust or openness. And this week I really wanted to put live with, because my word says this week live with blank.
Okay.
And I really wanted to put live without expectations, and I didn't want to put that subtraction negative, so I tried to reframe it. So I put trust, because I feel like that encompasses everything, so, yeah.
Yeah, Kym, you're doing all these things, like you're living a good, healthy, happy life.
It's the writing is the only, seriously, the only thing missing from my life is that practice.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would have to sacrifice, because I only have so much time. So one thing has to go, and it's this recipe that makes it so I can live in the happy place I am right now.
Yeah.
And so if I take out, running or dog walking or yoga, or, I don't know where that time for writing can come from right now.
There it is.
We're just in 60.
These are the trade-offs.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, I've, over the last 10 years, sacrificed some of my health to do the things that I've done.
Yeah.
And I'm righting that ship a little bit. I mean, look, I'm super healthy and robust and so on.
There's nothing.
But compared to how I used to be,
Yeah.
I made a conscious decision to continue to exercise, but to exercise just to feel better versus to build myself up.
Yeah. No, and I do actually, I love when I ask you to demonstrate, but I do it because it makes my brain so good. And I get so many amazing ideas when I'm out there. There's days where I'm stopping every 20 feet to jot something down, So I feel like for me, the writing actually doesn't happen at the computer.
That's fair. I think that's I have the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know the last question I asked?
Oh yeah, what are you reading, writing?
Reading, watching, or listening to that's really good.
Yeah.
You can't say big magic.
Okay, I did say that, and I said enter expert already, that's separate. So whoever's listening to me, please just listen to the new Tunis episode. There's 30 minutes in, I'm listening to the story about the gyro, and then email me at Hotmail. You can talk to somebody about it.
Okay, armchair expert.
Oh yeah, it's so good.
Okay. What else?
What else? So I just pulled out, again, Oprah has this book. It's called The Wisdom of Sundays. And it's just little excerpts from all these people she's interviewed on Super Show Sunday and Super Show Conversations. There's a lot of spiritual people on, people have overcome obstacles. Listening to that podcast last year really took me out of some dark places.
Okay. She has Steve Pressfield.
She does, yes. I sent you that podcast earlier. Yes, she does. So that's amazing.
I think the book's better than that conversation.
Yeah, it is. It wasn't a strong conversation. I was just, look at the synchronicity of all this coming into my life right now.
Sometimes writers are best.
Yeah, just writing, don't talk. Just sit at your computer.
Models,
Yeah.
actors, just act, show other people's lines, don't do your own.
Yeah, but it is great, so I like that. And then I read fiction, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
What, is there anything that stands out?
So I just started another book yesterday. It's so good. I have a really hard time starting a new book because I don't like reading the first chapter. If a writer doesn't get me on the first page, it is so hard for me to keep going and to get into it and to get to know a new character. It's like meeting new people. It's dreaming. It's like that. So I started this book. It's called, it's something like Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows.
Okay.
I can't tell you who the writer is, but it's great. Pretty good start, so.
Well, Kym,
Tune in.
guess what you have done?
I did a podcast.
You are not consuming.
I'm creating.
You're creating.
Perfect.
And I thank you for doing that.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on.
It was fun.
thank you for listening. Don't forget to visit petermcgraw.org for more information about our guests, show notes, and social media links. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with others. Join Dr. Peter McGraw